G'day guys and gal. Many people think that the Shattered Legions, those 3 loyalist legions who were betrayed and ambushed upon Istvaan, resulting in over 90% losses for those legions, made the survivors irrelevant, and I can't really blame them for that train of thought. But in truth, the survivors actually did a lot of damage to the traders, waging vicious hit-and-run guerrilla warfare tactics that saw thousands upon thousands of traders die, as well as tip the balance on countless war zones throughout the heresy. The most impactful of these Shattered Legion warbands was the one led by Corvus Corax himself, the only loyalist Primarch to get out of Isvan and reunite with the remains of his legion. After licking his wounds, Corvus would non-stop attack the traders, often with almost suicidal recklessness, and he did a lot for the loyalists, nearly dying like 5 times in the process, and I reckon that's worth talking about. Before we get started, there is only 48 hours left for the Ravenlord sale, the dopest miniature release of 2024. As a quick recap, this model was made in collaboration with a world-class modeler and features 2 head variants, a human visage and a more beaky head. It also comes in 4 scales, including a tabletop scale for the wargamers out there, a 75mm scale for those of you that like mini painting but want the details to be a bit bigger, a 1/12 scale as a bust-sized project piece, and then the godlike 1/6 scale for the monsters of you out there. Now, as it's the last 48 hours, I thought I would sweeten the deal, especially due to the fact that due to our production and logistical upgrades, we are way ahead of schedule, like we've sent over 98% of the orders out already. This sweetening is that for every 32 or 75mm Ravenlord that we sell in the next 48 hours, I will chuck in a free 2024 A4 nude cosplay calendar. For those that don't know, these calendars were made at the start of the year and feature 6 stunning models with their boobs out in 12 different cosplays. We had a couple left over, so this would be a great time to clear those out while pushing some of you over the edge. For those that buy the 1/12 or 1/6 scale Ravenlord, we'll give you a free A3 2024 nude cosplay calendar. Is the calendar widely out of date? Yes. Do boobs expire? Never. Last 48 hours, guys and gal, then he's gonzos for goodies. This model is worth it. Today we'll go over what Corvus actually did after he survived Isvan to determine if he actually had an impact on anything. Also, quick shout out to Alex Christie for the amazing thumbnail artwork commissioned for this video. Corvus absolutely dicing some traders never gets old. Full res version is free on my Patreon. Let's get into it. First things first, how the fuck did Corvus manage to not only survive, but escaped Isvan when Ferris was killed and Vulcan was captured? Vulcan only getting captured because he literally cannot die. Well, Corvus wasn't a retard. Ferris was way too balls deep in the enemy lines to have any hope of escape, and Vulcan charged Perturabo's gun line like a maniac and ate a nuke for his efforts. Corvus, on the other hand, was like, which Trader Legion is the biggest bitch? The Wordbearers. So he disemboweled Lorgar, killed most of the Gal Vorbak, and led a breakout that brought thousands of Ravenguard out of the Weregeld depression, where most of the killing was occurring. From there, the Ravenguard used their supreme stealth and hit-and-run capabilities to harry the traders and withdraw further and further away, with Corvus himself leading many of these ambushes. Corvus really shines from here on out as he basically becomes a one-man legion, pushing his Primarch power to the limit. However, eventually he and his surviving sons are cornered, with a massive World Eater force, led by Angron, coming to claim their skulls. Corvus knows he will die here. Either Angron will kill him or his sons will, but maybe he can take the Butcher's head in the process. But then something crazy happens. A Ravenguard ship appears in orbit and begins extracting the Ravenguard survivors. Commander Bran had come to Isvan after listening to a human commander who was having prophetic dreams. The dreams made it clear that Corax needed help. The man was a latent psyker and would use this dream-like ability to help the Ravenguard on multiple occasions. However, he kept it secret as it technically violated the Council of Nicaea. Another factor was that the Alpha Legion actually wanted Corvus to survive. Hence, when a World Eater ship went to intercept the rescue ship, the Alpha Legion agent on board killed its captain and stopped it from interfering. I'll explain why in a bit. The Ravenguard was saved, with a few thousand survivors. However, this would only be the beginning of them eating shit. A number of Alpha Legionnaires had infiltrated the Ravenguard, posing as Ravenguard who had died on Isvan by taking their armor, voices, and faces. The goal was to become sleeper units and await orders, so the Alpha Legion were working with the Xeno Cabal at this time, who foresaw that the Ravenguard would get their hands on something very important, something the Alpha Legion wanted. Hence, they wanted to steal it from them to ensure the Ravenguard could not return to power. Corvus traveled to Terra to speak with the Emperor about rebuilding his legion. The Emperor agreed to give Corvus a special gene code blueprint that would allow Corvus to rapidly rebuild his legion with faster growing, superior space marines. I use the term give here lightly. The Emperor gave him a basic guide on how to get through the most complex booby trap dungeon in the galaxy, a dungeon which would then kill a number of Corax's men and even custodians. However, Corvus would prevail, obtaining the gene tech. He would take it back to Deliverance and unlock its secrets, spawning in hundreds of new and improved Ravenguard. These Ravenguard would be called the Raptors, and they were just straight up better. Like fresh Raptor recruits were able to beat Ravenguard veterans in sparring matches. Using these Raptors, Corvus would strike out at traitor targets, including an Emperor's Children fortress, massacring all those he could find. However, disaster would then strike. The Alpha Legion would swap out the Ravenguard gene tech with a corrupted copy and then attack the Ravenspire. Shit seemed bad until the new Raptors, around 500 to 1,000 or so, mutated into these abominations. Despite now being fugly, they were still loyal warriors and they were powerful. They tore into the Alpha Legionnaires and fought off their attack. However, the chance to rebuild the Ravenguard Legion was lost. Corvus would use his few thousand Isvan veterans, the small garrison on Deliverance, and his new Raptors, both the untainted and tainted, and fight the war his way. Corvus would go on to engage in 3 pretty awesome war zones, each as a test of Corvus's character and resilience. The first was Conix 2, an ocean forge world where massive forge cities would float on the water and even be drivable, like massive dredges. It was controlled by the traitor Mechanicum, but had many loyal Sons of Mars still on it. Corvus landed on one of the main cities, rallied support from the secret loyalists, and then outplayed and captured the city's traitorous commander. But this was just the start. He needed to conquer the capital city to win the war. So the mad lad fucking charged his forge city at it, and he rammed the 2 gigantic dredges together. He then used his Mechanicum forces to distract the enemy, whilst his Ravenguard took out key enemy targets and scattered the enemy forces. With the enemy distracted, Corvus struck at the enemy stronghold directly, where he came face to face with a wordbearer who merged with the warp and became a demon prince. At least I think it was a demon prince. He became strong as fuck, it doesn't really matter. The two fought, with Corvus actually getting overpowered a bit until he was like, fuck this shit, you're a twink-ass wordbearer, I made your father whimper like a bitch. So Corvus proceeded to annihilate the wordbearer and he killed the traitorous Mechanicum leader, liberating the world and claiming it for the Ravenguard. The next war zone was more straightforward. It was a world controlled by the Sons of Horus who terrorized the shit out of it, so Corvus did what he did best. He stoked the flames of rebellion and led an uprising. Now millions of angry civilians is cool and all, but Sons of Horus holding bolt guns do a pretty good job of stopping them, but it doesn't do much when Corvus Corax is invisible and flying around shearing your head from your body. Using the distraction of the rebellion, Corax and his men were able to slaughter the Sons of Horus and liberate the world. They stayed there long enough to rally a few hundred Shattered Legion warriors to their banner before moving on. The final and most interesting war zone of these 3 was Kandia, an Emperor's Children controlled world that had many loyalist space marines and civilians imprisoned, who were being experimented on by Fabius Bile. The start of the invasion went well, with Corvus and his warriors doing a textbook Ravenguard invasion, his elite warriors disabling the enemy's power generators, communications, and air defenses. However, this is where we see that Primarchs aren't invulnerable, and eventually their recklessness can fuck them. Corvus decided to do what he always does, wait for the battle to be engaged and then fly over it and attack the enemy headquarters and end the war with a swift decapitation strike. However, this was anticipated. As he flew towards the enemy HQ, he got locked on by anti-air defenses as well as enemy gunships. He was shot out of the sky and upon falling was attacked by Fabius Bile's new men, who used experimental warp weaponry that really fucked Corvus up. Like he was paralyzed and getting his shit kicked in, and he genuinely thought to himself, wow, is this really how I die, what the fuck? Fortunately, a squad of his elite warriors arrived and saved him, but it really does show that a Primarch can't just run forward by himself and instantly win a battle. A rocket or enough firepower will fuck them up pretty good. Corvus enters the enemy HQ and is shocked to see that the prison is run by a Ravenguard, a survivor of Isvan who Lorga convinced to join the traitors. The Ravenguard roasted the shit out of Corvus for being a coward and running away from the killing fields before then blowing his own brains out in front of his father. Corvus was like, okay then, retard, and easily disabled the reactor meltdown that the Ravenguard initiated to try blow up his father. The code to stop the meltdown being the Ravenguard's prisoner code back on Deliverance, a sad subtle nod to the fact that Corvus knew and cared about all of his sons, even the dipshits like this one. These battles had kind of fucked with Corvus. He began to see himself and the Primarchs as abominations, creatures who the galaxy would be better without. Initially, he actually reinstated his librarians to help his legion, only to then flip-flop and ban them again. The human commander Prophet then had a vision that said they needed to go to Yaren to save the Space Wolves. Corvus agreed, but then he sent the human commander and his army to Beta Garmon, a suicidal war zone. Corvus seemingly wanted he and his legion to die, while taking as many enemies down as possible. When they arrived at Yaren, they ambushed the traitor fleet that was attacking the wolves on the world, scattering it and allowing the Ravenguard to land. They then took the initiative, assassinating enemy war leaders and more or less giving themselves a few hours while the larger traitor force regrouped. Lehman was still injured from his duel with Horus, and the Space Wolves had been reduced by about 80 to 90% from all their battles. Corvus decided he would make a stand here and die side by side with his and his brother's warriors. This is where we get to see Corvus unleashed. This dude goes fucking invisible and then charges into the enemy army. One moment the enemy are preparing to attack, and then the next a tornado of death hits them. They could only track Corvus's location by the disemboweled flying corpses of their comrades. That would have been horrifying. Corvus was going full emo here. He was ready to commit and get killed, but after eating a rock to the face, he was like, maybe death is cringe, and he ordered a withdrawal, saving himself, his legion, Russ, and the Space Wolves. This moment probably being his most impactful in the entire heresy. This would actually be Corax's last hurrah in the heresy. He would spend the rest of it at Deliverance rebuilding his legion. Sure, he would speak with the Lion who would visit, but he wouldn't join the Lion's genocidal campaign against the traitor homeworlds, merely gifting them with some weapons and a handful of specialist warriors to accompany them. Corvus would send some Ravenguard and other Shattered Legion warriors back to Terra prior to Yarrant, but for him the heresy was over. By the time he was ready to rejoin the fighting, the Siege of Terra had ended. Corvus was happy to split his legion into chapters. The heresy proved that 1,000 marines could be a wildly effective fighting force. With the heresy over, Corvus also had a few dozen of his extremely mutated Raptor marines remaining, warriors who would continue to degenerate. He gave them the Emperor's Mercy, an act that mentally broke him and turned him into an avatar of vengeance. Corvus would then enter the Eye of Terror alone, ascend to become a demonic shadow beast, before then terrorizing a bunch of wordbearers and clapping Lorgar's ass in round 2. Since then, we haven't seen or heard from Corvus, but I suspect Lorgar's absence from the setting is directly tied to that of the Ravenlords. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up the Ravenlord Trader Hunter. You will literally get a free calendar with it, and there's only 48 hours left. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more trader hunting content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.